Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Melanie Barham. I'm the co-chair of the Equestrian Canada Health and Welfare Committee. Today's call is to inform and allow stakeholders in the equine community to ask questions about the equine infectious anemia proposal that is being put forward by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Everyone is on mute at the moment. And the call is being recorded so that we can post it on our website afterwards, provided that that works out okay, so that everyone can benefit from the answers that our experts are going to be providing. If you wish to speak, I will give you the code to do that after the end of the instructions. Today we are joined by Dr. Carolyn James from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and Dr. Penny Greenwood from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, both of whom have been intimately involved with developing this proposal and working with a national EIA working group. Some of those members are also on the call today. I believe Dr. Mary Bell and possibly Dr. Greg Evans from Alberta, and also Dr. Wayne Burwash from Western Canada. If you wish to ask a question, you're very free to do so. Just to be reminded that this call is not for giving feedback on the proposal. All feedback must be provided by the 30th of June, and it must be provided in the format that you can go to the CFIA portal, which has been sent out to everybody. And we are also requesting, if you're from an organization and you're providing a response from the organization, or if you wish your response to be included in the Equestrian Canada official response to CFIA, please send to Christy House at khouse@equestrian.ca. So I'm going to just let you know that it's *6 to unmute your line, and then when you want to remute again, press *6 again. If we do find that one person is taking up too much airtime, I will ask for us to move on because I want all participants to be able to get their questions in. So Carolyn and Penny, if you would like to unmute your line, *6, and then I would welcome any questions at this point in time.
Hi, Melanie. It's Carolyn. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, perfect.
Okay. I'm not sure if Penny's on yet. I know she was trying to join in, but...
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Great. Thank you. So if I can open the lines up if anyone, so press *6 if you wish to ask a question.
This is Kane Kwam from Saskatchewan. I'm a professional horse trainer. I have a couple questions before we actually get started talking about the disease itself. One would be, who are the members of the focus group that created this program?
Sorry, this is Carolyn. You're asking who sat on the committee?
I'm asking who comprised, or who were the members that comprised the focus group for the EIA program?
You mean the working group that I mentioned has been working together on this?
Yes, that is my second question, I guess, because we've had indication in several different documents that there was a focus group and a working group. So I would like to know who those participants are.
Okay, so the CFIA worked to put together a small group. I don't know, we're talking about the same thing. It's working group or focus group. I'm referring to the working group. So we endeavored to put together a group of representatives. We were trying to keep the group fairly representative regarding geography as well as sector as well. We were looking to include academia, the provinces, and we had a total of 14 individuals on that group.
Could you list them individuals, please?
Would it be better if I sent you a...
Yeah, Carolyn?
Yeah.
I believe, aren't the members of that group listed in one of the previous papers?
I don't believe we listed their names. We listed their organizations. Now, they're broad associations, but of course several of the members wear several different hats. But we didn't have the actual names in the document.
Yes.
I'm not looking for specific individual names. I would like to know the groups represented.
Okay, I think Carolyn can send you the paper on that. I just want to clarify from where your question was going. So the focus group or the working group, whatever you want to call it, got together and through that came up with the consensus request to CFIA that CFIA remain involved with a EIA program, that they wanted to see some mandatory testing in the West, and that they were understanding that in order to do that, CFIA had to use zoning in order to gain the authority to do that. So that is all that the working group did. When you say put the proposal together, the proposal has been designed on how that has actually been implemented, and what you're seeing now, that proposal was designed by CFIA.
Okay, but obviously there were several groups working on this together, and it would be prudent to us to know who or what industries were asking for this program to be developed.
Okay,
Carolyn,
so we will forward you the names of the organizations or the ministries, which provinces, etc.
Okay.
We'll provide it to EC.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is, who are the industry stakeholders consulted during the development of this program?
This is the industry consultation. This is the consultation of stakeholders right now. So everyone and anyone that has access to the document via either their organization or the internet are the stakeholders that are being consulted. So,
well, that is incorrect, because in previous statements or releases that CFIA has put out, you allude to the fact that you have consulted with industry stakeholders. And so, because this has only been happening for the last 2 months approximately, and your releases were prior to that, I'm interested to know what the stakeholders were up to the point of the release of the feedback program.
okay, so I've already explained to you the prior process, that what the stakeholders were involved in. There were two previous papers that were put out, and that the working group that was representative of certain stakeholders, or that we've referred to as industry and academia and other stakeholders, provinces, as I said, worked on looking at what they wanted and what they put forward. I've already listed to you that they wanted CFIA to be involved. They wanted some mandatory testing in the west of Canada, and that they were in agreement with CFIA using the zoning as a tool to be able to have the authority to require the test. And at this point, Melanie, I would prefer that we allow some airtime for questions about the program proposal itself.
That sounds like a great idea. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Just going to open that up. Thank you for your questions from Saskatchewan.
Hi, George from the Moose Jaw Exhibition Company. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Looking over the program, curious to know, once it's implemented, who's going to enforce the new rules? Will that be, like, we're a show facility and also a tenant facility. We do probably, in the course of a year, somewhere in the neighborhood of 70,000 horse nights on the grounds. We're curious to know, how will this be implemented, as far as, will the shows be responsible for making sure that there are negative Coggins papers? Will the facilities be responsible? And I guess who's going to pick up the price for that? That's my first question.
Okay, maybe we'll start with that one.
Okay, it's Carolyn here. Thank you. So as indicated in the proposal, we foresee a collaborative approach as far as identifying the sites that will be the designated sites. As far as exactly how the enforcement is going to roll out, we are still in development. I mean, we haven't fully developed that. We're at the point right now with we have a proposal out for how we would like to, or how we see this going forward. And then once we know that is for sure the direction we're going on, we would get down into the more fine details. But we do see us working to identify attendees, and then working to figure out the best ways to ensure that testing had been accomplished or had been performed before attending the event. So we may be working with certain organizations where it's part of they require EI testing as part of the registration process, in which case the approach could be one way, and we may have to modify that if that's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
We're getting into something not really knowing who's going to be responsible for enforcement or carry the burden of the cost for that. It's estimated at our facility to be compliant, it'll cost us approximately, within a few dollars, $135,000 a year to go into compliance with this, because we would have to do at-the-gate testing continually, when the bulk of our shows do not require a negative Coggins paper. And I'll speak this is maybe off topic, just a tidge, but not really. Most of the shows, I can speak for the shows in Saskatchewan because we host almost 50 of them a year. Most are not in a financial position to accept any more cost against their shows, or the shows will disappear. And I know cost always isn't the decision maker, but this could hamstring this industry in Saskatchewan specifically if it's not handled carefully. And the enforcement of it is going to be, if we have to pay as a facility, we have to pass that on to our shows. The shows aren't in a situation to pass it on to the participants. The uneasiness in the industry right now is we've already had 3 show cancellations this year, and they're all saying there's an uneasiness as to what the future holds in regards to the industry.
I'm just sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but because this is kind of verging into feedback, I'm going to just ask you to pop that into an official feedback if you don't mind.
I've already done that times
that's
now, but
fantastic.
I think the problem that we have is when you guys have your meetings, I don't think there's anybody sitting at the table that I'm aware of that is explaining to you the problems out there in the day-to-day operation of facilities that host the shows. Because I'm not just speaking for myself. I've got good close friends at a lot of the facilities in Saskatchewan.
So, yeah, Megan, can I just throw in a clarification, because one point in his original question was not clearly answered, and that is CFIA, Carolyn did say it will be collaborative, but the enforcement will be done predominantly by CFIA, and the person that is being responsible under the regulation is the person that owns or cares for or transports the horse. So I'm not understanding why there would be a cost for the event. The people that bring the horses to the event have to have the EIA test done. You can't have the test done at the event. As Carolyn said, that if an event chooses to include their EIA testing as a requirement for an event, then we may have a reduced enforcement or something like that. But we're not looking for the event to take on the enforcement 100%, nor can I envision any activity that will cost the holder of the event any money.
And just so I understand that, it would be completely voluntary then. All they'd have to do is say, yes, I have the paperwork. Who's going to check the paperwork?
We are.
Who's we?
CFIA is ultimately responsible for the enforcement of the law.
We've been in this industry for decades. and I mean, I appreciate what you just said, but this could take whatever direction CFIA chooses to implement, which could be either enforcing it on the shows or enforcing it on the facilities at a later date, which could be 3 months.
No, actually it cannot. If from a legal point of view, we can only regulate and enforce it on the people that own or transport or move the horse, not the event.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any? I'm going to move on to another question, and if there are further questions, they can also be sent to Christy House at khouse@equestrian.ca, and we will ensure that they are sent on to CFIA for a response. Is there any other questions? *6 to unmute your line, and *6 again to mute after you finish speaking.
This is Kim Motes in Saskatchewan. I'm a judge, clinician, and a trainer. I am wondering, what are the consequences for noncompliance?
Hi, it's Carolyn again. So that is, again, one of the aspects of the development process that we would have to delve into. We have a few different options, or we're looking into the options that are available to us. But as Penny said, the enforcement would be directed at the individual responsible for moving the horse if they were found to do it without having complied with the requirements. We also would be looking to make sure public were aware of where maybe when noncompliance did occur and the location.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question?
I have a question. It's Nicole in Saskatchewan about this whole process. Why EIA? Why do you pick EIA as a disease that you want to enforce high regulation upon the everyday horse owner?
So it's Penny. The history of EIA is that we were not into EIA, and the industry came forward via its national industry bodies and requested EIA to be involved, and that's when it was made a reportable disease. And then when we started to back out of the program, the industry again approached our minister at the time and requested that we remain in that program. And this time around again, as I said, the focus or working group that we had, which was across the breadth of the stakeholders, indicated they wanted CFIA to stay in it. From a regulatory point of view, this is an extremely minimal program. Certainly in phase 1, the only people that are going to be affected by the program are people, or by this requirement, are going to be people moving horses to a event with 200 horses or more. And so that's really not a very stringent program whatsoever. When I think of all of our other regulatory programs, it's extremely light. So I'm not sure that. So the answer to your question is industry, and it's not severe in our opinion at all.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I would question similar to what Kane had in the beginning of wanting to know who the people of the industry requesting this are, and maybe the percentages of those people who are affiliated in some way with Equestrian Canada through their bodies or whatever, versus the number of people out there in general who own horses and do these smaller events that are not thus far attached to the national body. Is there information available on those statistics?
Can I just ask that whoever is on, we're getting a lot of background noise. Can we get a *6 from everybody? Thank you. Okay, go for it.
Can I just make a comment here? It's Mary Bell.
Yes.
I think, as I understand it, it really isn't just this industry. I think it's the world that has identified EIA as a disease that is to be controlled. Am I wrong, Carolyn?
No, you are right, and I was going to make that point as well. It's an OIE listed disease. It's one that there are international movement requirements for. It's one of the reasons why it's on our reportable list is because it was an OIE listed disease. If you try to move your horse to the States, the tests that you're required to have is an EIA test. So it's not like we came into this out of the blue. There are reasons why we're in it, and why parts of the industry have been very interested in controlling it.
And this is Melanie. And certainly when Carolyn refers to the OIE, those are international responsibilities to other countries for reporting and for control. Almost every developed country has an EIA control program. Are there any other questions from the line?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear. I've got two voices on the line, so we'll have I think the lady was first.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello. This is Iris Davies. I'm with the Alberta Carriage Driving Association. And, we have quite a few questions, but some of them are being answered already. But one of our questions is with the 6-month testing period. We have a lot of cutter rallies and sleigh rides and things that happen in the wintertime, which is probably a low transmission time of year to begin with anyway. But if it's a 6-month testing period, that means most of our people will have to test twice in a year. So we're wondering if it could be a 12-month testing period so that it covers the wintertime when most horses aren't going to transmit it anyway.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Carolyn.
I said that's a good question. I mean, if you, for those of you who did the online form, you will see that that's one of the things we were asking about, the testing interval. 6 months was put in the proposal because it's in line with export requirements, but we are definitely open to feedback on this, and we are receiving, I'm sure you can appreciate, we're receiving quite a wide variety of responses on the details, but this is one that we would, we're definitely going to be looking to see what the response is on, and making modifications as needed.
Thank you. Okay, and then the gentleman who had the question?
Melanie, just before that, can we just add just one little more piece of information, because we have had some feedback about the seasonality. Unfortunately, in Canada in the last few years, we have been seeing cases that the transmission seems to be occurring out of the normal vector season, and not just one or two, several cases. So, yes, there is supposed to be a seasonality associated with vectors, but in our recent experience, that is not 100% true, certainly in Canada recently. So we do also have to take that into consideration, whether or not we're dealing with iatrogenic transmission, although, we've tried to verify that on the infected premises and not being able to do that, or whether we're dealing with climate change and some impact on new vectors, we don't know at this point.
Can I answer to that a little bit?
Sorry, who is this?
This is Tori Begeson.
Okay.
Well, that's because Coggins is testing for the virus, not the disease. For the antibodies, not the virus disease. So those horses could have been carriers for months and months. It doesn't mean it's been transmitted in the winter. It means they could have been carrying it for 6 years as a healthy carrier.
I think
having a vector season still is very pertinent to the 6 or 12 months talk.
I think that anyways, I'll let CFIA answer how they do their tracebacks and that type of thing.
Well, the point being that if we're testing for antibodies, if they've had it for 6 months or 6 years, we test for antibodies in the winter, they're negative. We test a month later in the winter, and they have them. I'm not convinced that your argument stands up, and that's what has been happening.
Has that ever happened?
Yes.
I think what Dr. Greenwood is trying to share is that they have had cases where there hasn't been iatrogenic or needle-sharing transmission, and that there has been there has been transmission from, and we're seeing that with tick-borne diseases too, so it's not just EIA.
Right.
We're seeing that with lots of different things, and we don't, while, we're trying to be as science-based as possible here.
Okay,
so
can I ask a question then?
Yes,
my
you can.
question is, do you think that the validity of chasing for EIA horses is worth the harm that it will do in the Western provinces as a basic grassroots type raising of horses industry? For instance, there's 50 horses on my place. I cannot test, and I will not test, and I will cut down in what I haul, as will many other people in the West, and I think this will do a huge harm to the industry. Is it worth it to hunt these EIA horses who are likely, in the most part, 99% healthy carriers? I know there's some validity to what you say about crossing borders, but we're already covering that. We already have an export program involved, and I've tested many of my horses for that.
Okay, so let me
is it worth
try
it?
and
That's my
answer
question.
that for you. So we realized in doing the initial consultation with this, we realized that this industry is immensely diverse. We also realize that there's an immense diversion of opinions about EIA from both owners, others, industry, people that are involved in the industry, as well as even veterinarians. And there are some people that do not believe that EIA is worth controlling, and there are others that adamantly do. And we have everything in between those extremes. And what we tried to come up with was a proposal that addresses and respects all of those opinions, and that's extremely difficult to do. So that is why we pose the objective or the goal that we're only trying to protect. We are not trying to eradicate or ferret out all the infected horses in Canada. That is not what we're trying to do at all. All we are trying to do is protect the population of horses that's owned by people that care about the disease and have been taking risk mitigation steps, i.e. testing them. And so when they are commingled with untested horses, their horses are at risk. And so that is the only place that we are trying to address the risk. So if you're bringing untested horses to commingle with tested horses, then we are going to try and address decreasing that risk. If you want to have perfectly healthy carriers and you never want to test your horses, that's your business. That's okay. You keep them on your property. You mingle with other people of like-minded, and they will not pose a risk to the own tested population unless they go where that population is also going. So we have tried to respect opinions such as yours, and it's been difficult, and this is the only way that we could come up with something that does allow people to still have healthy carrier horses or EIA-positive horses that they feel are perfectly fine, and yet still try and control the disease for the population that does care about it.
Okay, thank you, Penny. I just wanted to, so we're at 12:30. We said this would be a half-an-hour call. Penny and Carolyn, are you guys okay for a few more minutes for a few more calls? Because I sense that we have a couple more.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll take a couple more calls. Please, again, make sure that it is not feedback, but that it is a question about the program, and so that you can provide an informed feedback. Go ahead.
Can you hear me yet?
Yes, we can.
It's Doug Bowers from Manitoba calling. The question I guess I pose to what was just said there about not trying to eradicate it, and that is, let's all face reality here. The only way to truly fix this problem and get rid of it is eradicate it. And you look at other industries in livestock, and that's what they do with it if they find it. So why are we not taking the drastic step to do it that way? I realize it is maybe not what everybody wants, and I'm not opposing anybody saying, no, I don't want to test, or I do want to test. I'm just saying, why don't we try to fix the problem completely?
Thank you.
So it's Carolyn. I just want to clarify. So in the proposal, if a positive case is identified, we would still have the same response. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Correct, but I mean, the problem is with what you're saying here of going to be with function of 200 or more horses. I can go to my small town fair or event that may have 25, 30 horses or under the number 200, for example, and I may have tested, and you may not have, and they could end up being positive. The other side of that is with the way testing's done is I can test today and be negative. I can test in 24 hours and be positive.
Okay, so I'm going to break sort of into two things there. One of the things that's really important to understand with this proposal is Penny was saying the federal program, we are trying to focus on this, protecting that owned and tested population, and we're trying to have this, measured approach to it, and with the phasing in, and that again will be revisited to figure things out. But by no means are we saying that we wouldn't encourage those who are organizers of smaller events at any time, if they feel so inclined, to have their own requirements in place. It's just that we recognize we have to come into this in a measured approach and be able to, as you say, figure out the things like how we're going to enforce this. And so we would we are by no means saying that other people who are responsible for the commingling of animals should have that conversation and, have that, assessment as to whether or not they want to require testing at their events. So somebody in Manitoba who has a 25 horse event, we're not saying that wouldn't be appropriate to make sure your attendees have been tested at some point. Regarding your second point, you're right. The way the test works is it assesses the antibody level at the time of the test. If an individual and if we were, this is the case with other diseases too. You see this in human health. If you are tested on that day, it's telling you your status on that day. If you then go and participate in risky behaviors, that test is really only valid for the time until you test it.
Correct.
So we are not able to control that, but all of those parts. But we figure that by having some regular testing in place, the chances of it are going down. Awareness is also going up. People are having conversations to say, I shouldn't be going and participating in such event or such activity because I feel I'm at my horse is at risk. So it's as Penny was saying, we're trying to find a balance between not being overly burdensome and saying every time a person moves their horse off their property they should have a test, because that's unrealistic. We can't enforce that. We can't expect people to do that. But we are saying regular testing is better than nothing, and then if education and awareness will help you make choices to help protect the status of your horse.
Right. And of course, one issue that I can openly say I know is in our province is that when testing is done, you could get a handful of vets and end up with a whole handful of different costs, and that's something that I think needs to be looked at as well from your end to maybe make people a little more at ease about even doing it if they don't want to.
Okay. Thank you. Is there? I'm going to open the line for. We can take probably one or two more questions here because we're getting close to time. Is there anybody from the eastern side of Canada who wishes to ask a question? Because we've heard a lot of questions from the west. So anybody from eastern? Sorry, go ahead. Melanie, sorry, it's Carolyn. Yeah. I just wanted to, and I was kind of expecting a question on the permitting by now, and I'm surprised I haven't had one. I just wanted to make sure, so if those of you who read the proposal hopefully also went into the questions and answers, and because we put that part of the document together to sort of hit those areas that we thought, that we anticipated there to be some areas of questions and confusion potentially. So the permitting system we appreciate is not it's not necessarily intuitive, but we just wanted to make sure that people understood that the way it's been developed, those moving in the primary control zone would be required to be permitted. The reason for that is so that I have to back up a little bit. We need that permit to be able to have the test
requirement in place. And we need a zone in place to be able to get the permit in place. But the way we've written it up, or the way we proposed it, the person who needs to move their horse anywhere other than the designated site doesn't really need to do anything. There's no application for a permit. There's no payment associated with getting that permit to move to your neighbor's farm. If you are moving your horse to a designated site, a different permit applies to you, but you don't actually have to get that permit. You just have to comply with the requirement that a test needs to be done. We would not be checking to see if you had a permit. The check would be to see that you had the test. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that, because some of the questions were coming back that it was going to be there were fees and application processes involved, and I just want to make sure that was clear.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I would just take that clarification just one step further, because we saw a question the other day. So the 4 Western provinces would actually work the same for the owners for the requirements, even though underneath the regulatory authorities system is slightly different. So again, it's in all of the 4 provinces. In phase 1, it's horses moving to a designated event of 200 or more would require a test. That's it. That's all. So just so there was a question about them being treated less stringently than Saskatchewan and Alberta the other day, and that they're being treated equally, not behind the scene, but the actual what the people have to do is exactly the same.
Okay, great. I also wanted to, so Doug Orr, who is my co-chair of the Health and Welfare Committee, was part of Equestrian Canada when the industry had requested CFIA testing. So Doug, if you would like to speak to that a little bit more, I know that Doug wanted to make a point on that. Star 6 to unmute, Doug. Oh, maybe he's not on the line anymore. Just a quick. Okay, well, we'll come back to that.
I have 2 questions. It's George from Moose Jaw. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One is, at several points, there's been the comment that the industry has requested it.
Yes.
I'd like clarification on to know who is the industry.
So I think that what they were. I'm going to jump in here. It's Melanie, because Doug is in absence, and Mary Bell, Dr. Mary Bell may jump in as well. Okay, Mary, I don't know if you would like to speak to that.
I'm
here as well, Melanie.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay, Doug and Mary, if you guys want to take that answer, that would be great.
I can answer a little bit about industry representation. And I don't think there's a question that any of you have asked or a comment that you've made today that was not part of that working group discussion. So I trust that Carolyn can provide you with what portions of the industry were represented. Certainly, I think that Western Canada was well represented and very much a part of discussing this.
Okay, thank you. And Doug, I think that you had wanted to make a point about when industry had originally requested that CFIA become involved.
Right, and that was, there were kind of 2 points I wanted to make there. Thank you very much, Melanie, and thanks very much to Carolyn and Penny for managing this call for us. This is very, very helpful. And thanks to everybody who's called in. This is very useful. Yeah, this came out of, and Melanie will have some of the history, but I just wanted to speak on behalf of Equestrian Canada because one of the earlier callers raised a question about Equestrian Canada somehow driving this initiative, or it was only Equestrian Canada events and shows and members who were involved in this. And what I wanted to point out was CFIA has asked us to facilitate in connecting with people in the industry and the community to provide feedback on this. And I just wanted to point out that where our role comes is not as a driver of this initiative, but rather as a conduit from industry through us back to CFIA to try to facilitate these conversations and make them as useful as possible. We have a couple of committees, the Equine Industry Development Committee and our Health and Welfare Committee, who have been in communication with CFIA through this process, and a number of members of our Health and Welfare Committee who are DVMs have been working very closely with them on some of these initiatives. But I just wanted to clarify that, and Melanie's pointed that out already, please send comments regarding this to CFIA. I know Carolyn and Penny would like you to comment through their portal, but by all means, too, also please, if you have feedback or other questions, contact us via our manager, Christy House, and again, that's just K-House, all lowercase, at equestrian.ca, and she will forward these comments both to our committees and back to CFIA. And the role we would like to play here, and I really appreciate the comments folks have raised so far, because this is information we need to hear, and we would like to provide a means of communication and conduit regarding this and other issues of interest back to our federal agency partners.
Thank you so much, Doug.
It's George again. I guess I thought I'd ask as fairly, Doug, I think that was your name. Who are you with Canada?
Go ahead.
Yes. Doug,
are you with Equine Canada?
I'm sit on the board of Equestrian Canada, yeah.
So I guess the industry, I mean, again, in the last two people have used that word several times. Is the industry Equine Canada?
No, not at all. We don't perceive that. We are actually reaching out. We would. That's an excellent question, George. I really appreciate that. Equestrian Canada, we do not hold ourselves to be the industry. We recognize very clearly that the industry is all of you who are on this call today and folks that we want to get in touch with, and we don't speak on your behalf in any way, shape, or form. We would like to, and we're actually reaching out to as many industry partners as we can and trying to identify who needs to be at the table and the best ways we can communicate with them. So your question is excellent one, George. Is no, we do not identify ourselves as, quote, the industry, and recognize that the national herd is huge compared to the number of horses that we specifically speak for, say, with regards to our own databases and participants in Equestrian Canada. One of our roles is attempting to identify who out there needs a better voice with and a better conduit, and we would greatly appreciate hearing from those people and trying to create something. We have a Category C membership, which is breeds and industry, and we're trying to determine better ways to actually talk to folks like you. The lady who just spoke said, I've got 50 horses in the back pasture. Those are the people we know are out there that we don't have a contact with yet, and we're trying to establish that. So appreciate your comment, George.
Okay, well, I'll follow up with one last comment, I guess, or question. I think when we probably used, and I stopped writing it down, but we probably used the word industry at least 15 to 20 times in the whole conversation. And I think for those of us that are in the industry, it causes me a little concern when I hear the industry is requesting whatever it is. But yet we don't really know who the industry is and who is requesting things. I think we need to be careful when we're saying the industry wants something, that everyone understands who the industry is and who is leading on whether it's this or any other disease or any other rules, regulations, to make a blanket statement and say the industry wants it.
So there are industry representatives that were put forward by...
Exactly, who?
Like bodies or...
Yeah, we in CFIA our normal mode of operation is that we try and deal with national organizations. So we contacted every equine national organization that we could find in Canada to work to participate on the working group. Some we did not get any response from, some we did. So like Equestrian Canada, but also the Horse Welfare Alliance of Canada and other bodies that I said we contacted, like one of the national rodeo associations, but we did not receive any communication back from them. So we contact those, but we always say that it's not you. We want you to feed through. We want you to be a sounding board for all your provincial associations, and from your provincial associations, those are hopefully going to go down to the local associations, and that is the way that we work with all of our industries, be it beef, swine, poultry, horse, whatever, because other than times like this where we put something out for public consultation, it is extremely difficult for every owner, every producer, every person involved in the business to be able to get their input. And as I said, we realized, and it was through the participation of the national industry bodies representing their provincial industry bodies and knowing what their local industry bodies thought, that we know that the opinions are extremely diverse on this disease. But if there is one fraction of the industry asking for something, then we look at, can we meet that need while without detrimentally affecting another part of the industry that may not hold the same opinion. So you're right, it's very hard to understand that word, but we have to work the way that we work by networking down and then networking back up. And we do realize that it is not one voice, certainly not one voice with a common desire.
This is Melanie speaking. Again, I'm not speaking from the CFIA perspective, but I would strongly encourage you to send your feedback to Equestrian Canada and also through CFIA. I think that every opinion is important, and I think it's important to provide those. So that's all that I can offer. Like, that's what I can share with you right now.
Will it make a difference?
Yeah, and I'll just echo that too. Just please send those comments to us, because that's what we need to hear. And thank you.
You need to hear from the people.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Are there?
I had a question. It's quick.
Could I ask a question?
Well, hold on a second. Okay, we had one. I had heard a female voice first. I don't have a. We can take probably one or two more questions because we do need to wrap this up. Well, we had said we would be done by 12:30.
It's quick. I'm a horse trainer professional in Saskatchewan. I was born and raised in Germany, so I kind of know the procedure policies there. I spent quite some time in the U.S. I traveled to the U.S., so I know, you need cognitive testing cross-border. Some facilities required in the U.S., and then I know what's going on within Canada. And as a whole, for the past 2 decades, there has been numerous attempts everywhere, I guess, to limit the disease, eradicate the disease, somehow stop the transmission of the disease, and it's been helpful to enforce cognitive testing, but it has not completely eradicated the disease. And I know even the CFIA proposal states that the goal is not to eradicate the disease. So I, first of all, question why are we doing it? Because limiting the disease has not stopped it, right? So my question is, why take the same approach as we have for the past few decades in various parts of the world? Why not change our approach, such as putting money and effort, human resources and money into, first of all, finding a testing method that can actually detect virus load or how much virus that horse is actually spreading in order to identify whether it's an actual threat to horse population. Second of all, vector control. Why is nobody talking about how to eliminate or crack down on vectors, especially maybe at horse events, but even at everyone's property? Third of all, understanding if that disease even presents that risk that everybody seems to be so afraid of. There's more diseases out there that have a higher volatility, that present a higher risk to the horse population, and those aren't even talked about. I probably would speak for a few people that know they've went to horse shows and horses have contracted EHV, and it started to go around, and it actually does kill horses.
It's Melanie. I'm going to interrupt you because I think we're verging into opinion again. So, so your question. Let's try and answer your question as we're at. Penny and Carolyn, do you want to field this one?
Okay, so I can deal with the first one regarding, the one regarding testing for the virus. As I understand it, the testing methods that we are using here are actually very good. They are internationally accepted. The methods that we use are in line with our OIE reference laboratory, and so to test. You're asking why are we testing for the virus versus the antibody?
Well, I can test for the virus, but what I'm saying is why aren't we trying to take a better and new approach at this rather than beating down the same path by using the Coggins test as the non plus ultra to control or eradicate the disease? It has not worked for the past several decades, so why not take a new, better, and creative approach to try and figure out how we can actually control the disease?
Actually, if you look internationally, since the availability of the serological tests, a lot of gains have been made as far as the amount of AEIA in the population. And what we're trying to do now is focus our efforts where there seems to be more of a need, as opposed to blanketing it. The U.S. are having conversations as well about where do they go now. They've managed to drop the prevalence of the disease in the tested population greatly with the approach they've had to date. Now they think they may need to change their approach. So it's a tricky disease. The control program actually has been working, but it now needs to focus based on what the goals are.
The other thing that I would add, Carolyn and Penny, is that in Canada we made a big difference in the East with the program by the industry, the fraction of the industry that did undertake voluntarily requiring tests at shows, and so the EIA rate in Canada dropped precipitously in the east of Canada. And so the reason that we chose to redevelop this program at this point in time is we were spending dollars on responding to horses in Western Canada again and again and again, and yet there hasn't been any gain in the last, as you said, 10 years. We've plateaued on our own program. So this is to take a step forward to try and get Western Canada to the same place that Eastern Canada got to. The difference is that Eastern Canada chose to do it voluntarily and Western has not done it voluntarily. CFIA is a science-based organization. We actually do have a reference laboratory in Canada with scientists that are up on all of the most current world knowledge, and they frequently liaise with other international experts on this disease. I noticed that everyone on this call has, or a lot of people have been talking about Coggins test, and if hopefully if you know the research, then you know that we are not using the Coggins test in Canada nor in the States as the current test. We are using a different test. We use a lot of different tests with EIA. And the problem about looking for virus load is it is not a static disease in a carrier horse. And you can have a carrier horse that is got a very low viral disease for a long period of time, and that horse gets stressed, and its viral load can go up precipitously. So if you have been reading the research papers, it's not just that straightforward. We have been playing with PCR testing in our reference laboratory, which does detect viral DNA or RNA, not antibodies. So we do have that test in our laboratory. It is not the be-all and end-all of being able to go forward. And we do think about those options when we decide to go forward because we are a science-based organization. Even with science-based and fact, people still have different opinions on how to apply the science and how to come up with requirements. So it does ultimately still come down to opinion.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Hi
Penny.
there,
So,
Hillary from New Brunswick here.
Hillary, Hillary, we have to wrap up very shortly. Do you have a quick question?
I just have one quick question
Okay.
because I'm moving to Saskatchewan, so I'm kind of concerned with what I'm hearing here. My husband was talking about it. If we take all the steps to protect our horses and somebody doesn't take the steps, are we open to sue them if our horses contract the disease? Put a twist on it here.
I don't know if I have the answer to that. I don't know if CFIA would have the answer to that.
No, it's a question for a lawyer.
From the excavation company, I can shed a little bit of light on that, having consulted with 3 lawyers in regards that you'd have to be able to prove that the horse contracted it from a specific horse.
Yeah. Well, with the 30-day trace back, you should be able to, right? If you find that particular horse, right?
No, because the problem would be, depending on where you were, how many shows you had been back, what gas station you stopped at, that somebody else had a horse in a trailer beside you, it would become, a judge would have to sort that one out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it would be just case by case, so it's still plausible. So, okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Can I ask one more question, please?
We've really got to wrap. We really have to wrap it up. We're already half an hour.
More? It'll be real fast here. I'm very concerned about the industry stakeholders. Again, it's Kim from Saskatchewan, and that we were not represented well as the recreational horse owners in Saskatchewan with your national body. And I would like if I could get the minutes from the meetings of the focus groups.
I'd just like to point out, having this public consultation, every single horse owner in Canada right now has the opportunity to send in their own opinion. So we are allowing at this point in time every single horse owner or person involved in the industry to be equally represented. So if you have an opinion, the most thing, rather than going after a working group that was put forward to look at a possibility, express your opinion, put forward your comments, and we will look at the balance of them that we receive across the country and make a decision on what is being presented to us.
Thank you. That's a great point. I just have one more concluding comment from Christy House, who's our liaison for the Health and Welfare Committee, and who is going to be our point of contact for any additional questions. Christy, go ahead. I'm going to wrap it up. *6 to unmute. Christy, are you on the line? Okay, if not, I'm gonna just Christy, are you there?
This is Kane. I have one more question, and it has to do with.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We do have to wrap it up. If you have additional questions, please could you send them to Miss Christy House at khouse@equestrian.ca. I really hate to cut you off, but we are very much over time, and I personally have to. I can't facilitate the call any longer. I have to run to something else.
Melanie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, Christy.
Okay. So it's obvious to the fact that everybody still has questions and concerns. As Carolyn mentioned, the consultation period is so that everybody has a chance to have their feedback and say what they need to say. It is just the first round of consultation and then a pilot. And as we did today with communicating this call, providing what our feedback looks like, and we're going to continue to make resources and outlooks to connect everybody. Not only did we communicate this information to our internal stakeholders as well as our PCSOs, but we contacted 30 other national organizations, including recreational riders and draft clubs, and we will continually make an effort to make sure everybody is aware of the steps as they proceed. So I think, Carolyn, if you could get to me
a description of the working group that can be distributed through us, then everybody will have a little bit more at ease to see where it is. And moving forward, we'll work together as a country to get it results for something that works with everybody.
Thank you. And I would, this is Melanie again, so I'd like to thank everybody for your questions on the call. I apologize if I had to cut some of you short, and I want to make sure we have the right, that we have airtime for as many questions as we can. And I would most like to thank Dr. Penny Greenwood and Dr. Carolyn James for answering questions from CFIA. And the members of our working group, the CFIA working group, including Dr. Mary Bell, who was on the call today. This will be posted on EC if we, as long as everything is all right with that and the recording works fine. So we will be posting that. And please do submit your comments to CFIA. And if you wish for them to be included as appendixes, then please do send them. And in the national response, please send them to Christie House so that we can. And the deadline for that is June 30th. Thanks very much, everybody.